Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating tale of wits, trickery, and, well, the ultimate cost of unbounded greed. It's a classic folktale that perfectly shows how a person's endless desire for more can literally be weaponized against them.
So let's just jump right in by asking the central question that drives this whole narrative. How exactly does a poor farmer, with no power, no weapons, and no real money, completely destroy the single most powerful figure in his village? Sounds impossible, right? But as you'll see, the weapon of choice wasn't a sword at all. It was the landlord's own psychological blind spot.
Section 1. The Greedy Landlord. Picture a small village where power is entirely dictated by who controls the crops. Here we have two polar opposites. On one side, there's Bolaram. He's a poor but incredibly sharp farmer who acts as a sort of protector for the weak. On the other side is Jagannath. He's a rich, notoriously stingy landlord who forces everyone to sell their harvest to him at basically terrible prices, keeping them all trapped in an endless cycle of poverty. Section 2. The Magical Fox. Okay, so Bolaram finally decides he's had enough. He outright refuses to sell his crops to Jagannath. Instead, he heads to a neighboring city, sells his grain for a fair price, and uses the cash to buy some plump chickens and pay a hunter for two identical foxes. He ties one fox up securely in a room at home and puts the other on a chain. When he runs into Jagannath, the landlord asks, "Why are you dragging a fox around? Won't it run away?" Bolaram casually claims it's a magical fox that fetches chickens. He even invites Jagannath over for a feast the next day, right before unleashing the chained fox, which, of course, immediately bolts. But the next day, Jagannath arrives to the smell of a massive, delicious chicken biryani feast, and there, sitting right in the house, is the identical second fox. Jagannath is just completely blinded by greed at this point. He wants this fox. But when he proudly brings it home, his wife Rukmini is having none of it. She flat out tells him, "Even if I die, I won't believe this." But Jagannath? He totally ignores her. He takes his new pet out, tells it to catch a rooster, lets it go, and, surprise, surprise, the fox disappears forever. Now, the crazy part here is the cost. Jagannath was so desperate for this magic, he started offering 500 coins, then 1,000, and finally, Bolaram played innocent and squeezed a staggering 1,500 coins out of him for a totally ordinary wild fox. That is a massive loss. Section 3. The Magical Shirt. As you'd expect, Jagannath realizes he's been played and is absolutely furious. He sends his men to capture Bolaram, and they tie him to a wooden pole, a dhani, outside in the freezing cold to die overnight. But Bolaram is a survivor. To avoid freezing, he spends the entire night spinning rapidly around the pole. By morning, he's generated so much body heat that he's dripping with sweat. When Jagannath comes out, demanding to know how he isn't dead, Bolaram goes on the offensive. He blames Jagannath. He says, "You must have angered the magical fox, or your family didn't believe in its magic, and that's why it didn't come back." Then, pointing to his own sweat, he claims the ordinary, ancestral shirt he's wearing is actually magical, keeping him boiling hot in the winter and perfectly cool in the summer. And wouldn't you know it, Jagannath's greed strikes again. Completely forgetting he was just scammed, he covets the shirt. Bolaram plays hard to get, but eventually Jagannath shells out an astonishing 2,000 coins for it. He proudly wears just this thin shirt to visit his in-laws, where he basically turns into an icicle and gets ruthlessly mocked by his entire family. So, furious at being tricked for a second time, Jagannath decides to just end it. He stuffs Bolaram into a sack, ties it to a thick tree branch hanging right over the ocean, and, well, the branch is a bit too thick to chop quickly, so Jagannath actually takes a lunch break. Yep, he leaves Bolaram suspended over the sea, which leaves us wondering, how on earth is our clever farmer going to survive this mortal danger? Section 4. The Hunchback's Soar. The answer is actually a hilarious twist of fate involving Jagannath's own family. While Bolaram is shouting for help from inside the sack, he hears someone walking by. It happens to be Lalkishan, Jagannath's father-in-law, who suffers from a severe hunchback. Recognizing his voice, Bolaram masterfully manipulates the situation. He immediately starts shouting about how his back has miraculously been cured. He tells a very curious Lalkishan that sitting in this magical hanging sack perfectly straightens out your spine. Lalkishan is desperate for a cure, so not only does Bolaram get him to swap places, but he actually charges the old man 100 coins for the privilege.
Balaram walks away 100 coins richer, and when Jagannath returns from lunch, he blindly cuts the branch and unknowingly drops his own father-in-law into the raging sea. Yikes.
Section 5. The Underwater Kingdom. Months go by. Jagannath assumes his nemesis is finally dead. But then, Bullet Ram casually strolls right back into the village with his wildest story yet. He tells a shocked Jagannath that he didn't die at all. Nope, he was rescued by the Sea King's guards. He describes this unbelievable underwater kingdom filled with unimaginable riches, unlimited gold, diamonds, and pearls. He even says he was offered a beautiful Apsara, a celestial maiden, as a wife, but politely declined because he missed his own home. Jagannath's eyes practically turn into dollar signs. Hearing about all this free wealth, he literally thinks, I will marry all the women there, remove the king, and become the king myself. This right here, this is exactly why he's so vulnerable. It's not just foolishness. His limitless greed and hunger for power make him an incredibly easy target. He practically begs Balaram to take him there. Balaram agrees but insists it has to be a total secret. For their journey the next morning, he prepares 2 boats. But here's the fatal trick. Balaram gives himself a sturdy boat made of strong wood, and he hands Jagannath a fragile boat made entirely out of easily breakable clay. Section 6. The Price of Greed. And this brings us to the climax of our explainer. They paddle far out into the deep ocean. Once they're out there, Balaram starts loudly banging his oars against his wooden boat, telling Jagannath that the noise will summon the Sea King's messengers. Well, Jagannath is completely consumed by his impatience to get to the gold and the Apsaras. He decides his boat isn't making enough noise, so he aggressively starts smashing his own oars against his clay boat. And of course, the clay shatters. The boat completely breaks apart, and Jagannath drowns, ending his reign of terror over the village farmers forever. When we look at this visual breakdown, you can really see how fast the stakes escalated. It started as a scam over a magical fox for 1,500 coins. Then it grew to a 2,000 coin loss for a sweaty ancestral shirt. But because his greed just couldn't be satisfied, he eventually paid the absolute highest price: his life. So what's the big takeaway from this explainer? It's that unbounded greed doesn't just make someone an exploitative landlord, it makes them dangerously gullible. Jagannath's obsession with getting something for nothing completely short-circuited his logical thinking time and time again. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. When have you seen greed blind someone to an obvious deception, leading to their own downfall? Think about modern scams. They almost all rely on this exact same psychological flaw. I hope this structured journey through a classic folktale sparked your curiosity and showed you the true mechanics of deception. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.